podcast, shooting the shit about the Suns since 2019.
Hey, Jamsters. Thanks again for pressing play and welcome to another edition of the Suns Jam Session Podcast. My name is John Voigt. I'm managing editor, brightsideofthesun.com, and I'm joined as always by, who are you?
Oh, Matthew Paul Lissy. That's it. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm optimistic. I'm Peachy Keen Jelly Bean. There's a fun game I play. Every time I walk into the office at work, there's a security guard downstairs, and I have to badge in to go upstairs.
Wow, fancy!
Yeah, and every time I see him, that's the game that we play. Is we change up what we say to each other. How are you doing today? So fine. How are you? Like you do that every day. So we change it up, and we come up with I'm exuberant. I'm optimistic.
So do you guys keep track though? Do you write it down?
No,
you could forget, right?
But there is one day where I walked in. I'm like, I'm gonna say I'm exuberant. I'm like, how are you doing today? He's like, I'm exuberant. I'm like, fuck, man, that was going to be mine. I guess I'm fine. Like I marched up to my myself.
Yeah, you lost.
I lost. I'm like, dude, you beat me. Like, how did you beat me? But welcome to the Suns Jam Session Podcast, whether you're watching along live or later or listening later. For those of you who are audio only listeners of the podcast, you know that I had a Twitter space that I hosted on this platform called Twitter. The day that the Suns free agency kind of kicked off, right? And I actually live reacted to the acquisition of Nigel Hayes-Davis. So if you're an audio listener, hope you listen to that. This is the video version, but this is also just me and Matthew shooting the shit. That was kind of fun. We had some of the bright side guys who write for the website came on and gave their points of view. But I can't not have my fix of Matthew. It's like just give me some of that Matthew, baby.
Yeah, you're the only one that says that. So I'm glad I'm your drug there, John.
Well, I realized another thing because we kind of changed out the format. We used to always talk a little bit, and then we'd play the intro song, and I'd pop a beer and all that stuff. And you haven't heard this sound in a while, so let's pop open a nice cold beer.
4-day weekend?
No, I work tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you work tomorrow?
Yeah, from home. So
he's like, I'm thinking about.
Yes, of course I'm working. Yeah, I think some of the people back at the office might watch the pod now, so I got to be careful.
I think I'm gonna work from the office tomorrow. I have a lot of stuff I have to do, and but I could probably do it here. I don't know. Decisions to be made, but that's for another date, another time. Obviously, we want to talk to you about everything that's going on around the Phoenix Suns and around the NBA overall. Free agency. The title of this is Suns Free Agent Frenzy, because there wasn't a whole lot of moves made by the Phoenix Suns when free agency hit on Monday, 3 p.m. Arizona time, 6 p.m. Eastern time. And I want to talk about the few moves that the Suns made on the fringes, what our thoughts are about that, and then just kind of go over some of the big offseason moves around the league and what our thoughts are on how these teams are reshaping their future. If it's a good move, it's a bad move, how do we grade it, all that fun stuff. So before we get into that, let's go ahead and just talk about the Phoenix Suns and their moves.
And now, ladies and Jamsters, news about the Phoenix Suns.
All right, the Phoenix Suns, two players. That's all they did, Matthew. 2 players is all they added. It's all they really could add, right? I mean, they didn't have a lot of roster flexibility. We know that they're in the second apron. They didn't make any trades, and I think when you look at the kickoff of free agency, where there were a few trades along the way, there were trades leading up to it. Are you disappointed that the Suns didn't trade, Grayson Allen or Royce O'Neal, at least to this point in time?
You know what? I'm not disappointed, but I do feel like they had some feelers out there. I don't think it was something that, was actually cemented that Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal would return as a Phoenix Sun. I think we all knew as podcasters and Suns fans that going into the free agent market, like during this time, during the last 2 days, we might see a Grayson Allen dealt, just to save some room, get underneath the cap, the second apron. But it didn't happen. And I wasn't upset because when I look at that depth chart right now, I'm like, it's not too bad. With Royce O'Neal in there as our backup 3 and Grayson Allen as a backup 2, I know all the time I talk about, hey, this guy's not a good guy off the bench. But that was one season. So maybe a second season, of course, him coming off the bench, maybe he gets a little bit more of a grasp of it and becomes a better player, a guy we remember from 2 years ago. So I'm okay with it. I think there's still something in the works. But of course, man, it's always a Bradley Beal thing, right? That's the one thing we were waiting for. We didn't really think that we're going to grab anybody from free agency. There wasn't a lot of sexy names. The sexy names were really kind of traded over the last few days, huh?
Yeah, and I think that you're right. When you look at Royce O'Neal and Grayson Allen, I feel like I half expected Royce O'Neal to be traded just because for $10 million, it's a steal of a deal, I think, especially when you look at the length of it, it's a couple years. And I thought that the Suns could utilize that to potentially get out of that second apron. And I've said it on this podcast. I've written about it numerous times on Bright Side of the Sun that I felt that the best mode of action, or the way that I thought Phoenix would operate, is from a prioritization standpoint, getting out of the second apron would be priority because it allows you flexibility both in the short term, and by short term I mean the next 3 years, and the long term, which is the next 7 years and your draft pick 7 years down the line. And it's clear that to this point that hasn't been a prioritization of Phoenix. They've navigated the draft quite expertly, in my opinion, but from a free agency and a trade market standpoint, I kind of like that they didn't trade Grayson Allen or Royce O'Neal and do a bad deal in order to get rid of them. They've kind of, I'm sure they fielded some offers. There's some teams out there like Chicago who could use some bench scoring, and they probably field them. And instead of going, well, we could take that deal. We could take one of their bad contracts for one of our quote unquote bad contracts, but they didn't. A best case scenario is you trade Grayson Allen to like Chicago. You get one player back who makes half of what he makes, and you get a couple like second round draft picks out of it, because we know that this front office can really utilize those draft picks in an expert manner to better the roster in future years. But they haven't settled in. And I know this probably sounds like a Suns fan trying to cope with the fact that there wasn't much activity and the Suns really kind of sat on their hands while we watched the rest of the Western Conference get better. But Beal is the big name. Beal hasn't been moved. Do you think Beal's going to be moved? Or do you think that we have to start to hit that point of acceptance where it's like, Beal's probably going to be here. What does that look like for Phoenix next year?
Yeah, you know what? I'm kind of 50-50 right now. I think the last pod, I was like, hey, for sure he's going to be moved by the next time we talk.
Yeah, me too.
Obviously, it hasn't happened yet. So I think it's really up to him, too, on his side. What does he want to do? Are there destinations that he wants to go to, knowing that, hey, when you look at the depth chart, if they really believe in a Jalen Green, him coming off the bench, does he want to do that again? If the Suns are stuck with him, but they can come to a compromise of like, hey, you're going to play a big role off the bench again. You're going to be able to handle the ball off the bench with Colin Gillespie, who we're going to talk about pretty soon. Mm-hmm. Do you want that, Bradley Beal? If he doesn't, then obviously these other teams he has to be more interested in, maybe just kind of be more open-minded. But these other teams, I don't know what they're going to give back. The big name to me with the Bradley Beal thing, and we'll probably talk about him a little bit later, is like the LeBron James thing. Like, I know it's stupid. It's probably a homer move for me, but it just makes more sense with the way that team is being constructed. A Bradley Beal on that team, if healthy, with Luka Doncic and now Deandre Ayton. I don't really know who they have for, off the bench or role players, because they don't really have squat. I know they still have Austin Reeves, but just to have him then there, it makes more sense for him. So maybe those two can kind of get together and kind of work things out, meaning the Lakers and the Suns, if that is a deal, because there's just so much news about LeBron not wanting to be there now, him being unhappy, not wanting to play with Luka. No one wants to play with Luka, all that shit. So maybe there's something there. I feel like that's their only hope right now for the Phoenix Suns, is that Lakers move with LeBron James.
Yeah, so for those of you who aren't aware, those are some of the rumors coming out of LA that, LeBron James, who opted into his $54 million player option for this year, is an asset that's not necessarily prioritized moving forward. It's Luka's team moving forward. And it's the first time in LeBron's career that he's not like the primary asset and his needs aren't trying to be met. And people go, well, then why did he opt in? Because he's going to make $54 million. He's not going to go somewhere else and make that amount of money because of bird rights and all the other intangibles. So if he was to decline that and go somewhere for less money, he's going to try to maximize the amount of return on his investment. So I'm not saying that a Bradley Beal and for LeBron James fucking trade is in the works. But I will say, we'll talk about the Lakers later when we go through NBA offseason moves. But I will say one thing that I was thinking about this morning driving in as I was listening to the Mind the Game podcast, which has LeBron James, Steve Nash, and Kevin Durant was on it, is I was thinking about exactly what you were talking about. What if LeBron James is kind of interested in coming to Phoenix? Because one of the only trade, like player for player, straight up, you can do Bradley Beal for LeBron James. Both of them are the only two players who have a no trade clause in their contract. I can see a world where Bradley Beal does make sense in a Los Angeles Lakers uniform and in their system. But this week he's sitting around talking to Kevin Durant. He's like, "Hey man, tell me about Phoenix." He's like, "Fuck no, man. Fuck that city. The fans suck. The podcasts go after you even when you do well." But in the same breath, like he can turn to his left after talking to KD on his right, and there's Steve Nash. He's like, "Steve, tell me about Phoenix." He's like, "It's great. 2 MVPs. Jason Richardson fucks your wife." Like, there's just a bunch of different scenarios. So I was kind of thinking about that,
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, it's a good observation because, those two, I mean, on the pod, I listened to a few bites of it. I just don't think LeBron was even like kind of listening during the pod. I don't know. He just seems like a dude when I watch the actual live video of the pod. He just seems like he's just like, he's like looking around, kind of thinking about what else he's going to do next. Him and KD are just so different. I feel like obviously very opposite. LeBron's like no other in the league. I feel like personality wise, he's totally different. He obviously owns the league, does what he wants. But I feel like if you're going to talk to anybody, talk to Steve Nash, because LeBron would want to come in here and do it the right way. But also, LeBron's not the guy in LA anymore, but he wouldn't be the guy here in Phoenix either, right? Would it still be Booker or would it be LeBron?
It's Booker's team. I think LeBron would be okay with that too. I honestly do. I think
Luka's a different animal.
Luka's a different animal because he's so ball dominant, And again, like I see people, like Michael Evans. No way in hell do I need LaFlop. I don't disagree, but the way I look at it through the lens of a Suns fan is we don't have traditional playmaking. He could assist with this. This is the same conversation we had like last summer when the rumors were happening, trying to talk ourselves into LeBron. But the big thing that I would like is the fact that if we traded for him, he has an expiring deal, whereas Bradley Beal doesn't. You have 2 more years of Bradley Beal. And speaking of him, we have a super chat. Thank you to Final Boss Emperor Roy Maivia, $1.99 on the super chat on YouTube. Appreciate your support of the channel. He says, can we package Beal and Richards? If so, for what? The answer is no. We can't. No. We're over the second apron. We can't aggregate salaries. Big Ten Jed says, Nick Richards should be traded to Indiana. How bad do they look right now? You might not like Ishbia, but he would never do what Indiana is doing right now. Yeah, Indiana is, and we'll talk about them a little bit later with what they did with Miles Turner. But they're the opposite of the Suns. They're afraid to spend. And they cost them Miles Turner. They do need a center. The challenge with Nick Richards, I guess I'll ask you this question before I give kind of my thoughts. Should we trade Nick Richards to Indiana?
Yeah, I think to anybody. I think for assets, I think you got to get rid of either Oso or Nick Richards. But Nick Richards is a sexier player, not just looks wise, but obviously they saw what he could do as a starting center. Not a starting center really in the NBA, but he did put up some decent numbers to start with the Suns. He's a hustle dude. He's a guy you can really count on to go out and play full effort. And he can do a lot around the rim. He's not as good as a Mark Williams, obviously, but he's a guy that can come in, fill a role for time being as a starting center. And that just means anywhere. I think that there's a lot more teams out there that might be looking for a center. So I'm good with the Suns kind of, parting ways with him for a few picks if that's possible. Just because of the depth. I think we're going to have too many centers, obviously, right now.
So I'm going to give everybody a preview. I'm on Locked On Suns tomorrow with Ben Garcia, and we kind of talked about Nick Richards. The challenge I have, like in this situation, Nick Richards to Indiana, if we're doing player swaps, he only makes $5 million. So the guys who make $5 million on their team are Tony Bradley, Ben Shepherd, and Johnny Furphy, right? So you're not doing that. If you look at their picks, yes, they have plenty of draft capital. In a perfect world, you get just 1 first for him. But if you get a couple seconds for Nick Richards, it's not the worst thing in the world. My issue, and the reason I'm not really I don't really prefer to trade Nick Richards is I like having the option of Nick Richards, considering if you don't have him, what are you left with? Well, you're left with Mark Williams, who's a walking double-double when he plays. It's that little asterisk. When he plays, he's a walking double-double with his backup being come on Malawatch. But if Mark Williams is injured, come on, Malawatch is your starter. Who's your backup? Now, Oso, if you keep Nick Richards, who I believe is a fantastic backup big, on a $5 million contract, I just think it adds it's a great center room. And he can come in the way that he did as a starter. The challenge with Nick Richards is he was a quality starter for us, but then he'd get in foul trouble. That was one of many things that he had issues with. But to have him come in off the bench and give you 4 fouls, in the short allotted time, I just like having options. So I'd rather keep him. Yeah. you can't really trade Oso for much. Again, picks maybe, but at the end of the day, that's how I kind of that's where I'm at mentally.
Yeah, no, yeah, and that's the same thing with Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal, right? Two guys maybe you want to get rid of just to kind of get rid of some salary if you can. But on the other side, it's like, what if there's injuries? What if there's guys that are missing? Obviously, our two guards are filled up to the fucking rim. But, right now, some of these guys might be traded, including Beal, who knows? So it's always good to have more. If you were to get rid of Nick Richards for a couple picks, I wouldn't be mad. But if we kept them, I wouldn't be mad. Like
wouldn't be the worst thing.
It wouldn't be the worst thing. Right now, the way the Suns roster looks, I'm okay with it. Even going to the free agent market, I'm not like a Lakers fan. Like, what the fuck are you doing, Rob Pelinka? You're not doing shit except for getting a buyout Ayton. Like, you know what I mean? We'll talk about that later. But I'm not that way. I'm okay with what they did during the draft. They did more than I ever expected. They blew me away. So it's like, let me just come down from that and let's relax. Let's look at our roster. Let's go into training camp. Let's see what we have. Let's see if Booker can lead this team as the main guy. Do you
feel that part of that is because your expectations for next season are lowered?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes. Yep.
I'm excited for next season because I have lowered expectations. Is that strange?
No, it's fine. I mean, I feel like even like if Dolly Parton was like the new co-host or something with Tom Leander or something like that, I would be like, whoa, what the fuck? Hell yeah, dude. Let's go Suns.
Let's spend that money to feel
happy. Anything else would make me feel happy from what we had last year.
Johnny Dang. A $5 super chat. Again, thank you. Thank you very much for supporting the show, especially here in the offseason. And he says, thank you for the offseason content, fellas. If we can't move Beal, what the fuck do we do? And then he says, Ben Shepherd for Nick Richards would be great. I don't know about that. Ben Shepherd's a shooting guard. We got enough shooting guards. I just like his mustache. Don't get me wrong. But if we can't move Beal, what the fuck do we do? Answer that one, Matthew.
Well, I think we kind of just did. I mean, I'm fine with just keeping them for this year. And I've said this plenty of times. I'm like, there's going to come a point we're going to have to buy back into what Beal's going to bring to this team. By media day, he's going to come up fourth in line, and he's going to come out to the media, and we're going to have to sit down and talk about the hard offseason and how rough it was for him and his family and what they had to deal with. If there's anything that broke about which teams wanted him, which teams didn't. That's the one thing that might frustrate me is if he's not traded or something. We hear later down the line like the Suns had an opportunity for this and he didn't pull the trigger. That'd be frustrating. But otherwise, I'm buying back in a little bit to just have him Beal off the bench.
Yeah, to answer Johnny Dang's question, what the fuck do we do? We survive. You get through it. Again, I've said this quote quite often, but the only way around some things sometimes is through it. And I don't think that you send him home. I don't think that you sit him out of spite and say, you didn't want to exercise your no trade clause in your contract. Therefore, you're going to sit at home and we're going to pay you. I think that's detrimental to the culture that you're trying to build with a new general manager, with a new head coach. You have Jalen Green on this team at this point in time, and again, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but on the 6th, when everything becomes final, right? When the Kevin Durant trade becomes final, there might be some different transactions that occur. But at this point in time, you got Jalen Green, you have Devin Booker, and you have Bradley Beal. And Jalen Green is a young version of Bradley Beal. Why not have him for the next season? Hopefully that's it. But season, learn from Bradley Beal. Why don't you do the opposite of what everybody's saying where it's like, sit him. It's like, no, bring him in and make him a leader. Make Bradley Beal can be a leader. We saw it at the back end of the season 2 years ago en route to being swept by the Minnesota Timberwolves. But those last 10 games, when the Suns had an unbelievably hard schedule, it was Bradley Beal who was getting interviewed after games after stellar performances, and all the young guys around him dumping water on him, like he just hit a walk-off home run. You never saw that with Kevin Durant. You don't see that with Devin Booker. He had garnered the respect of his teammates through his actions, his words, and his attitude. So I say you can re-inject that into the locker room, because again, it goes back to what Matthew and I were saying. Expectations. I don't expect us to win a championship next year. We're in the process, a timeline, if you will. Hashtag the alignment. We're in the alignment era, and what you have to do as a part of that is allow your finances to realign, and the best way around that is through it, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. We knew that too, and their additions that they had made during the draft was something that we didn't really expect to happen, right? So I think the Suns fans are sitting in a really good spot right now, and the more and more we get through this day by day, it's kind of letting go of last season. The hurt's kind of fading away a little bit, and along with that, it's kind of a hurt from Bradley Beal. A lot of people still want to blame Bradley Beal for all of this. It's not him; it's the Suns franchise for going out and grabbing him. Now that he's here, maybe they can just, with the new coach who seems more concise, someone that can actually be talked to and just maybe just relatable to the players, they can work something out. Because that's the way I'm looking at it. That's how I'm kind of envisioning it, as something like, hey, I can actually look forward to the season with a good coach and players that might fall in line, but also just playing their roles to the best of their ability. So I think Beal falls in line with that for sure.
And again, I think of us doing the post-game podcast after every game. And because of those lowered expectations, but that culture shift that you're mentioning and that new coach and that new voice, how we might not win games, but as long as we see fight and competitiveness, that's what the hardest part of doing these pods were after every game last year, Matthew, was you and I sitting here trying to, it's like, dude, why can't we even compete? Like, this team just mails it in. Like, if we see the opposite of that, I'll be happy, because that's where we started this podcast, right? You and I started this podcast in the 2019/20 season when we had Ricky Rubio, and this team was not winning games, but fucking A, they were fighting and it was fun. Mm-hmm. So, we'll kind of transition now into the Phoenix Suns moves this free agency. Again, not a whole lot of things happening, but Colin Gillespie was signed to a 1-year guaranteed deal with the Phoenix Suns. Did I ever have a Colin Gillespie drop?
I don't think so. I think it was kind of quick, right? He had his big few games here or there, but nothing really led to
right at the end of the season when I was unmotivated, just like the team.
Yeah. I mean, last season was like eating your 8th plate at a buffet, and you were just like sitting there like, we have to fucking deal with this shit.
So tell me, what do you think of the guaranteeing of former two-way contract Colin Gillespie?
I think it's it's obviously a fan favorite, and Colin Gillespie, he's a guy that definitely is going to bring the hustle. He fits the culture of the Suns. He's a guy that's not going to be a starting point guard, but he's going to be a great guy off the bench. Maybe even work his way into the starting lineup if there are injuries. Like, I feel like he has that capacity to really kind of get to a stage where injuries happen, Suns need him off the bench to go to the starting lineup. Maybe he can fill those minutes. I'm not putting a lot of expectations though on him. Other than that, I just think that this guy is really with a actual off season, the training camp, all of that with the Suns. I want to see what he looks like now, right? I think that's gonna do wonders for this guy. So I'm very happy, very pleased with it. Definitely an A+ signing for the Suns.
I agree. A guy who we were all frustrated at the back end of last year when the Suns didn't extend his contract, because it's like, great, you're going to put a guy who's putting this kind of stuff on tape, this kind of hustle, this kind of grit, this kind of give a shit on tape. You're not going to offer him a contract, so therefore he becomes a restricted free agent. And now we might have to bid against somebody. Ultimately, that move worked out because we did give him the 1-year deal. It's a vet minimum deal, I would think, which is like $2.5 million because he's a 4th-year player. So that's the minimum contract you can give him. And to your point, it's a good locker room guy, a good culture guy. I don't know. I know a lot of people expect a lot from him, probably relative to minutes. I just don't think that's necessarily going to occur. I think that currently the way that the roster is constructed with Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and Grayson Allen, and Jalen Green, I'm missing one of those shooting guards. They're going to play a lot of shooting guard double lineups, right? We're going to have to go back and get used to the phrases positionless basketball with this next version of the Suns, because they're not really buying in on the traditional point guard. And, again, here I am, just like you said, buying back into Bradley Beal. I'm going to have to start to buy back into positionless basketball. Are you ready for that?
I'm definitely ready for it. But the one thing that I am kind of worried about is kind of going, like you said, so it's going to be a heavy shooting guard lineup. When they go back into like kind of slowing it down with an actual point guard that might have a better vision of the court and just kind of set his own guys up, hopefully it's not so janky when it goes in between, both lineups, because it can, if there's a certain system that they want to throw in there where it's heavy on the two shooting guards, and if you have your point guard come in, everything kind of changes, right? So that was the one issue I kind of had with it. But this is the thing, though. I feel like the Suns still need another guard, a point guard somehow. Something might happen where they kind of get, or someone's available. Who knows? But the fact that the Suns re-signed this guy that all the fans loved and just kind of got out of their seats like a bulb in a way where he was where he would come on the floor, people would get up, cheer. Like, that's exactly what you need to kind of motivate this team, because not saying the Suns are soft, but they always did comment about the fans just booing and booing and booing. We have a lot of guys, including Gillespie right now, that are going to make us like stand up and cheer. So that's the number one thing I feel like, right? Because I feel like winning will come eventually, maybe not till next year after this season, but at least we have a reason to go watch this type of performance from a guy who wants to improve his career. Like everyone on this roster right now, including him, they all have like chips on their shoulder. I saw that on a tweet and I'm like, it's actually, up and down the line, all these guys have chips on their shoulder. So including him.
Yeah. And it's, again, that's what you want if you're building a culture that we think they're building based on the draft, based on what they've done. It's clear that they are defining those grittier, tough, like I like to say, motherfuckers. They're trying to make a team full of motherfuckers, and I'm all for that. Again, I think that it's going to be a challenge, and buying back into positionless basketball is going to be somewhat of a struggle, just because foundationally I'm not a fan of it. I'm a Phoenix Suns fan. We are a city full of point guards, from KJ to Jason Kidd to Steve Nash, CP3, Ricky Rubio, John Macy, Van Arsdale. I mean, our whole history is littered with quality point guard play, and this is the same conversation we had 2 years ago when we knew it was going to be a Beal Booker backcourt, which if you look at the numbers, it wasn't a horrible backcourt. The challenge was in the fourth quarter when things got tough and the minutes got tight, the lack of direction really hurt Phoenix. And that's where this could hurt Phoenix again. If we fall into that same issue, I'm going to be frustrated. The hope is Jordan Ott is going to game plan against that appropriately. He's got a system in place that's going to allow the team to be successful, to avoid that situation. But Colin Gillespie, again, solid free agent acquisition. The other free agent, I'll talk about available point guards on the market when we talk about CP3 here in a bit. But the other free agent acquisition for the Suns, a guy that I only knew from like a Twitter highlight, and I should have downloaded and played it, but there's the Twitter highlight. He played college basketball at Wisconsin, and there's a famous clip where he's sitting right next to Frank Kaminsky, and it's after a game and they're being interviewed, and he looks into the crowd and he looks to Frank Kaminsky and he goes, "Damn, that girl's attractive." And then the mic was on, right? And that's Nigel Hayes-Davis, 30 years old, EuroLeague MVP. What do you think of this signing?
Oh, I don't think anything, honestly. I think it's fun. I think that him getting an opportunity in the NBA is great. The fact that the Suns were looking for a wing, like Gambo said, I'm like, an athletic wing, who the hell was that going to be? Of course, it's going to be some guy from overseas who can score the bucket. But, I'm going to get a little bit excited, but I'm not going to get that excited. I don't have really any opinion on this other than congrats and welcome to the Suns. And I know he's a hard worker. He's a hard worker. He's gonna fit the regimen here in Phoenix this next year. But I just don't see like him really kind of breaking, 10 minutes a game or anything like that. What do you think about him?
Well, I think, again, veteran minimum contract, a guy who I feel it would be a good mentor for Rasheer Fleming. That's why I like that. And that's why I like a couple moves the Suns made this offseason. Getting Mark Williams, who can be a mentor to come on Malawatch with that Duke connection, getting Rasheer Fleming in the draft and moving up to get him, and then going and getting Niles Hayes-Davis, so NHD. We got to get used to that one. But NHD, getting him on the roster, he has, as I mentioned before, he has some motherfucker in him. And I'm okay with that. There's worse things you could have done with that roster slot. I do think he's somebody who could spot start as a power forward on this team. He has the experience. You have a bunch of young guys on this team that you're going to try to mold into quality NBA players. You have to put them in a position to be successful. And that's one thing that Brian Gregory said during his initial press conference, was the focus on development, which is almost the anti-James Jones, right? It's one of the reasons why this franchise has somewhat failed, is they went from development to going into mercenary mode. And now we're trying to get out of mercenary mode and go back into development. Time will ultimately tell if his words ring true, but it appears that he's trying to bring in archetypes of players who have a motherfucker in them, who can teach these young guys how to be pros in this NBA. So again, in 2 years down the line, when Bradley Beal's contract's off the table and the Suns have roster flexibility, you now have Kaman Malawatch, Rasheer Fleming, brought up the right way, almost like an Aaron Rodgers situation where they're brought up properly as a backup quarterback. So when they have an opportunity to become the full-time starters for this team, you can put proper pieces around them. So again, all this is on a whim, on a hope, on a prayer. But I like the direction, and I don't disagree with adding NHD to this team.
No, I don't either. I always keep thinking about the previous off seasons where we do this. We go through the free agents and we get excited about certain guys. And I feel like this kind of just falls in line with the other dudes from the previous season, like Bates Diop. Like these are
Yuta Watanabe.
Yeah. We're excited. Like, I'm just like, I'm going to chill. I'm not going to do it this year. All right. Just like the whole coaching thing. Like, I was not interested, obviously. If you listen to the pod, like, I don't care until the season starts. I just want to see it happen. But same thing with these guys where it's going to be like the 14th, 15th guy. It's, I don't know. It's a good story if it comes true. If he can actually crack the rotation.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah.
And I agree with what you said. And I think that's, again, there's almost an excitement in the non-excitement, right? Because you and I have sat here on podcasts when we do our Suns Free Agent Frenzy podcast at the every summer. And we go through a list of names. You're like, that's a great pickup. That's a great pickup. How did they get this guy? How did we get Tyus Jones, Monte Morris? How did we get Yuta Watanabe and Eric Gordon? And we get excited, then nothing comes to fruition. Whereas this offseason is, other than the draft, I feel like we made a splash in the draft. It's been kind of nonchalant. And I'm okay with nonchalant because the excitement burned me the past two off seasons. So yeah, I'm very much in a prove it kind of mode. But I'm appreciative of the steps along the way. And that's what this whole Suns Jam session therapy session is about, is going through all of these different ways and methodologies, trying them out to see what ultimately, if excitement can be garnered one day.
Yeah, no, that's what it's all about. And that's why I'm really enjoying this whole process. I really am. Ever since the finals was over, I've been enjoying everything the Suns have done. Yeah, I really have. So looking at some of the chat, Blaze Megatron, I'd rather have Frank the Tank, to be honest. I would, but he's not a power forward. And like, this guy is NHD is a quality wing defender. I'll take it. Raymond Gonzalez, I was disappointed in Grayson last year. He was a shell of his old self. I don't necessarily agree with that. Do you? It was just different. I just want to say that every player on our roster, it was different. I don't think you can take anything away from last year. That's why I was saying earlier with Royce O'Neal and Grayson Allen still on the roster, they're still really good players. And I think Grayson Allen's a really good player. I think Royce O'Neal's a good player. Yeah. Those guys can kind of go back maybe to their old selves. That's why I just want to kind of erase last year and just not worry about it.
And I will say it was a different role completely for Grayson last year. He wasn't starting games left and right. So Bryn Tannehill's in the chat. Bryn, she's like, hey, when are you going to have me on? I'll have you on this summer. We go through, Bryn writes for Bright Side of the Sun, has a couple amazing articles on there, really being real. And one thing I will say, some people in the Bright Side community get on Bryn's case for what they call her negativity. I call it realism when she analyzes the Suns. But if you go back and you read some of her writing last summer, and she's like, this team's not going to be good. And guess what? They weren't. Everyone's like 50 wins. Bryn's like 30 something, and she was right. So, I'll go through this offseason. We'll have John Bloom on. We'll have Dana Scott. We'll do the jamming with Bryn. We'll have that as a podcast. Rauro says 0 rebound Malawatch. Don't test me, Clark. Don't test me.
0 rebound.
This motherfucker, every time. Hey, remember the time when he had 0 rebounds in the championship game or whatever? It's like, yeah, so you pick the one bad game this kid had, and you're going to hold him to that. Like, don't be a douche.
So much talent on that team, too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so many other options. I get he's the rebounder, but he's also in foul trouble the whole time. Last thing relating to Phoenix Suns news, obviously the CP3 link is continuing to light up the phone lines, if you will. Will he, won't he? The rumor is Chris Paul, unrestricted free agent point guard. The two landing spots potentially could be the Clippers and could be the Suns. And rumors are that the Clippers don't want him. Gambo kind of goes back and forth on this one. Like, no, the Suns don't want him. But then he's like, well, I could see it. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on a CP3 return?
Yeah, the whole Clippers thing, it doesn't make sense to me only because I feel like James Harden and CP3 are kind of opposite. I feel like James Harden, he's a competitor for sure, but James Harden's going to be sick to death of this dude if he comes on the Clippers. I just feel that team's kind of more chill. They have the Kawhi Leonard and James Harden who love the ball when they're ready to ball, but outside of that, they like to have a good time. Chris Paul coming in there and calling him at 2:00 in the morning when they're at the strip clubs. I don't think they want that happening. That's why I don't think they want him. I like the Clippers team right now. Leave it how it is. Chris Paul coming to the Suns, though, I think it makes sense for Chris Paul to come here and makes sense for the Suns. But I don't know what you think is true. Is it that he wants to still be a starter or just to come to Phoenix and just to be a backup? Because I feel like he still wants to be a starter no matter what team he's on, right?
Well, Gambo said today that Chris Paul's open to taking a very muted role.
Okay. You really think so? I mean, he's always accurate.
I do. He's 40.
I know, but the one time I remember this interview he had, he's like, as soon as I'm a backup, I'm retiring. So if he can't leave the game and he doesn't want to go home to his family full time and he just wants to be around the dudes, come to Phoenix, man. It'd be a perfect spot for him. Devin Booker would love to have him back. We're bringing back the Valley jerseys. It'd be a perfect time for him to come back. And I think he'd be a good mentor. Who knows, a future coach for the Suns. I think he would help the first-year head coach. Let's get it done. And I don't know where else he would go. Is there Milwaukee or something like that? Maybe another team?
Not really. Okay. Not really. So I'll start with this. The only way to bring him here is if you were to give Kobe Bryant a two-way contract, right? Because currently the Suns have 15 players. We don't have an extra guy, but you do have Kobe Bryant, who the Suns took 41st overall, the 6'6" kid out of Kentucky who can shoot all day, but that's kind of it. One tool in his tool chest. You would two-way him, and then you open up an opportunity for Chris Paul to come back on a veteran minimum contract. And I can see both sides of this. Okay, the one side, and then I'll go over both sides, and I'll say where I kind of ultimately land. One side, you don't bring him back because he's older. You don't bring him back because you want to play faster. You don't bring him back because you want to win the possession game. And the last time he played with the Phoenix Suns, they had the 22nd pace in the NBA. Right, they were a slower team. They're a half-court team when he plays. If he were to come here, he would have, maybe a muted role, quote unquote, because we talked about positionless basketball. And you're going to have a lot of shooting guards playing the point Booker, point Green, point Beal, whatever they choose to do. That's he wouldn't start, in my opinion, but he could be a come off the bench guy, a steadying force. And I really look at it as an opportunity for him to be that steadying force at the beginning of fourth quarters, which killed us 2 years ago. Like if we had CP3 coming off the bench 2 years ago, that team wins 5 to 6 more games. I just think that's a cold, hard fact. And that's why we wanted last year so much for the pendulum to swing the other way to get point guards. We did Tyus Jones and Monte Morris, and we never used them as point guards. We continued to run a system where the point guard would just stand over in the corner and not move very much. So the reasons you don't bring him here is it just doesn't align with kind of the path you're forging forward. You're bringing in young guys, athletic guys, pace guys. To your point, the reason you bring him in here is from a leadership standpoint. He's a fantastic leader. He's a cerebral guy. It's one of the best brains in the NBA that you're bringing in to help mold your team. So I think if they have an opportunity to bring him in, I say go for it. We need point guards. And I'm, again, as I mentioned at the front end of the podcast, I'm a traditionalist. I like having a point guard on my team. And even if he's coming in and getting 10 to 15 minutes a game, even if he's coming in and if he starts and you only play him 24 minutes a game, I think that's a win for the Suns in this period where we are holding over. Now, that being said, I got 2 questions for you. The first question, and I'll let you answer this before I answer the second one, is if you bring him in, is there anything that could be detrimental to Devin Booker? Because you're trying to make this Devin Booker's team. He's old enough now. He's got kind of a kid who he can mentor in Jalen Green. And what you're saying is we want you to be the leader of the team, but guess what? We're bringing in an old leader. Do you think that that's a good strategy, or do you think there's any merit to that at all?
I'm big on putting Booker as a center just to see if it works, right? Because I think we just need to see this year.
Yes.
This is the perfect year. His show. Obviously. It's his show. But I think just coming off of last season and the season before, I just feel like it's too much for Booker on his shoulders. I just think it is to have the young guys to mentor all that just right off the bat. After getting rid of KD, having Beal in a limited role, Book being the main guy, I think that's why CP3 would just help him through it in a way, behind the scenes. Just help him navigate it, because I think Booker does need that from the outside looking in. So that's why I think it's a great fit.
If he does come back and Bradley Beal's on the team, who gets number 3? He's CP3, man. Like,
Is he waiting for the the Beal trade to be done?
Maybe that's it. He's like, once you trade
Can he
Beal,
be
I'm coming
33?
back. Alvin Adams.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So this brings me to a fun trivia question. All right, random. I don't know if you know how many numbers are in the Suns Ring of Honor. They're never retired in Phoenix. They're just in the Ring of Honor, right? How many numbers are in the Ring of Honor?
Is it 21?
It's 12. Of those 12, how many have been retired but then were worn again by another player?
5?
No.
0?
1.
1?
Do you know what that one was?
Is it? Was it 1?
Nope. 1's not retired. Booker wears it.
No, I know, but stat. I know it wasn't retired. I don't know. Which one was it?
33.
33? Okay.
Alvin Adams wore it. Who's the player who wore it after Alvin Adams? It's a popular name. You do know who he is. He drinks Sprite.
Was it Grant Hill?
Grant Hill wore 33.
Oh, wow.
Alvin Adams let him wear 33. So it's not out of the question of Alvin Adams, who's still close to the organization. If we get CP3 back, he's like, listen, dude, Bradley Beal's a fucking dick. He won't leave you 3. Okay, you can be CP33, you know? So just saying. It's just one of those fun things to think about. So yeah. I should have played the trivia time drop, but I had this whole article that I wrote for Brightside today about Kamon Malawach and what number is he going to wear, because every rookie in the first round, their number has been released, right? There's a Twitter handle that I follow that releases all the numbers as they come up. They got a cool little graphic, and I'm like, where the fuck are the Suns? We'll know on Sunday. We don't know with Kamon Malawach because he was part of the Kevin Durant trade, so it's not official yet. So we'll know on the 6th. And the whole premise of my article was like, well, what number is he going to wear? Because he wore 9 at Duke. Who wore number 9? One player. Yep, yeah. Dan Marley. Only player to ever wear number 9. There's only one player to ever wear number 6, which is what he wears with the South Sudanese team. Who wore number 6?
Wore number 6?
Yeah. Phoenix Suns history. Retired.
I don't know. I'm not doing good right now. I can't do this right now. I just
Davis.
can't do it. I'm not in the right headspace.
Name a number. Name a number on the Suns. I'll tell you who wore it. Let's see. Hit me with the number.
7.5.
No one. Come on. That's not
4.
a real number. 4. Everybody. 4 is the most worn number. 26 players have worn number 4.
Yeah.
Number, I think 8 is number 2. It's like 19 players.
Well, can he do number 99?
He could. Who's the only other player wearing number 99?
Boss man.
Ugh. Yeah, Boss Man. There you go. Jay Crowder.
Yeah.
But he can't wear 69. That's prohibited by the NBA.
Good.
So maybe he does 96.
Everyone had 69. We'd have 12 players on the list.
Yeah. It's like,
actually, you start 30 players.
Dennis Rodman, Ron Artest, Draymond Green, they're all wearing 69, assholes. You know. And it's going to be another one of those fun things because, like, Dylan Brooks, we don't know what number he's going to wear. He wore 9 in Houston. But anyways, I digress out of my weird obsession with number jerseys and all that fun stuff. So anything else on the Suns you want to talk about before we talk about what's going on kind of around the NBA? Do a quick whip around.
No, I mean, God bless you guys. You're doing a good job out there.
There you go.
Very happy.
All right, NBA offseason moves. The biggest one, and all of these somewhat relate to the Phoenix Suns in some capacity. Damian Lillard.
Yeah.
Bought out by the Milwaukee Bucks. Bought out. Waived and stretched. Right? Like, there's been a conversation in Phoenix for 5 months now, and I do take credit for kind of starting that conversation because I wrote an article back in February about it, about what would it take to waive or to buy out and stretch Bradley Beal, because you can't waive and stretch him. A buyout would have to occur, which is an agreement between the players on a set amount, and then you would have to stretch it over 5 years. That didn't happen in Milwaukee. Milwaukee, who had Damian Lillard on $125 million over the next 2 seasons, all right, same amount of length as Bradley Beal, $2 million more in total. They just waived him and stretched it over 5 years because that in doing so, it was $22 million, which is just under 15% of the total cap this upcoming season. What do you think about them doing that?
Good. Get it done. Get him out of there, dude. Like, okay, there's 2 sides to this. If you want to believe in the future of what the Bucks are doing, good luck, because I don't know what the fuck they're doing. And I don't know why every offseason it's always Giannis, it seems like, and LeBron James sitting back and just kind of watching their teams do what they need to do to keep them there. I'd rather these guys just be traded and just to a new team, a fresh start, let's get rid of these trade ideas because I feel like Giannis needs to go somewhere else. But obviously, you're not going to trade the best player. You're not going to give him his wish if he wants to be traded. This just makes sense to me. I know it's a dead cap, or you have all that dead space out there now. But
5 years, $22 million every year for 5 years.
You just got to pull the trigger. I think you just have to do it to just let him know, like, hey, we're going to get rid of him. It didn't work out. He's not going to be here next year. We don't want to waste a year.
He wasn't going to be there next year anyways. He tore his Achilles. His career's potentially over.
I know. And I think that's just unhappiness around the organization. I don't think you really want that around. I really think that's the reason. I think he was unhappy, Damian Lillard. I think the franchise was unhappy with the results they had. Of course, the injury happened. But even without the injury, I didn't believe in those two anyways.
No.
So the fact that he was gone, I'm all for it. I really am. I don't think they have, with the Miles Turner deal, we'll talk in a little bit, they don't have enough to me to really make it out in the East. But it's just a weird-ass team. So I don't know. After they waived him and stretched him, like, oh, let's see what else they do. Nothing else. Very impressed.
Well, they instantly brought in Miles Turner, and that's the reason why they did this. They wanted they are a team that is very similar to the Suns. If you look at the cap structure and everything that's going on in Milwaukee, they don't have a ton of picks. They gave those up initially to get Drew Holiday, and they gave up some to get, gosh, I feel like there's one other free agent that they brought. Oh, it was Damian Lillard. They gave up everything to get Drew Holiday and Damian Lillard. So they gave up all the draft capital. They were second apron team just like Phoenix, and they were faced with the decision like, hey, we want to add somebody big, but we can't do that because we have cap restrictions. We can only do veteran minimum deals. We're just like Phoenix. And so by doing this, they opened up a ton of cap this year, which allowed them to go get Miles Turner and bring back like Bobby Portis. I mean, they kind of got the band back together. They still got Kyle Kuzma just wandering a court somewhere. He's on a practice court shooting, and there's no basket there. I'm like, what is this guy doing all offseason? But again, the only challenge I have with it, and the primary reason for this is because they want to keep Giannis happy. Because next year, with no Damian Lillard, with a guy who's going to make $50+ million on the bench and might not be back till 18 months, and by that time he'll be 38 years old, you don't know what you're getting. They have a question that's very similar to what the Suns are facing right now. It's like, okay, do we want to try to go? Do we need to keep Devin Booker happy? Is that number one? Like in their case, do we want to keep Giannis happy? Do we want to keep Devin Booker happy? Do they have a youth movement going on there? They don't. Whereas here, we've kind of strategically put in this youth movement over the last two draft classes to where it's like, yeah, we do have a kind of a smaller foundation. So because Bradley Beal can play next year where Damian Lillard can't, and because we can afford to wait it out a couple of years where they really couldn't, with all the rumors going around Giannis, and those rumors are going to continue to compound throughout this upcoming season, off season and season, right?
Yeah, sorry, it's really hot in here. I was trying to turn down the AC.
I'll see. I got a fan down here.
Yeah, well, I have one right there, but it's like facing the other direction. I'm like, shit, it's on isolation. Yeah, I understand that, and I feel like what they're trying to do is try to maybe just look like, hey, we're making moves. We know you're not happy in certain situations. We're just trying to make things happen. We're in the news. We're not like the Lakers. We're just kind of taking a back seat. And we're trying here, Giannis. We're in Milwaukee. We won a championship. You should just be happy, relax in Greece with your family, and just let us do this. When you come back, you'll have a decent team. Not good enough to win a championship, but it'll be a little bit more competitive. I just think they're one piece away from being a little bit more competitive and maybe having a chance for Eastern Conference Finals. But I don't know what else they can do. And I don't really like their next trade either.
Yeah.
Or their next signing either.
Acquiring Miles Turner. I don't think, if you're going to make a move, that was the move that they try to set themselves up to. I mean, I get it. He just went to the finals. He's a quality player. He's now, he leaves Devin Booker alone because it was he and Devin Booker who were the only two members of the 2015 draft class to still be on their original teams. Now it's just Devin Booker. And I think, again, in Milwaukee, the challenge, what they're doing is they're trying to show Giannis that they're trying to compete in a weak Western Conference. What I'm afraid they're doing is they're driving him away. And you start to look at teams like the Celtics who've dropped a ton of cap and positioned themselves to go get him, and the Rockets as a team who is loaded up on assets. Both of them could kind of make deals with Milwaukee to give them some draft capital, give them some players that are acceptable to where Giannis could be on the move. Maybe not this offseason, but definitely come trade deadline. Milwaukee and Giannis, I wouldn't be surprised, man, if they move on from him.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I kind of predicted last year. I thought he would be traded. I thought he was a big acquisition for the Hornet, or not the Hornets, the OKC Thunder in a way. But I'm moved past that. Obviously, they won the finals. They're going to build whatever bullshit. They should have lost in the finals. What should have happened is if they had a healthy Halliburton since Game 4, they probably would have won in 6 games. But whatever, they won, so that's over with. This is why it kind of drives me crazy, because Giannis sits back, and I feel like maybe he asked out, maybe not, but I feel like he needs to force his way out just for a new, because I'm sick of these superstars just sitting back behind their phones, recording themselves, sending weird pictures on Instagram, just like, oh, what was it? LeBron had like a welcome back hat or whatever, welcome home hat or whatever, at the golf course. Like, just go to another team, force your way out, let that team rebuild. Don't let them make bad decisions this year that hurts them in the future. Go somewhere else. You won your title, like I said, just move on. And then they can get some good assets. And if I was a Milwaukee fan, I'd be like, we won a title with you. Go somewhere else, because I'm sick of this fucking team we're throwing out there of just and not having any cap left to spend. Yeah. No more draft picks eventually. Like, let's just move on from this, because obviously we're having a good time over here in Phoenix.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. Is that we're in the process of moving on. We still have our franchise cornerstone, but we're making moves around it that showcase a future, not one that's again trying to continue to do mercenaries and whatnot. Next guy I got to talk about. Let's see if I can find this. It's been so long.
Here he
see
comes.
What I'm doing. I can't find it.
I forget what the drop was, though.
Oh, I definitely remember what it was. I just got to see. This is horrible radio. It's me. It's just me looking for.
He's looking for a drop. Former Phoenix Sun.
A former Phoenix Sun. We want to talk about a former Phoenix Sun.
Was traded.
Here we go.
Lights, Cameron, action.
I would have never guessed that. I totally forgot. Someone created it for us, right?
Yeah, one of our Jamsters created that and sent us in, and we're like, yeah, man, there we go. All right, so he traded to the Denver Nuggets, man. Cam Johnson signs with the Denver Nuggets. Cam Johnson. What are your thoughts on that, man? They give up Michael Porter Jr. is no longer a member of the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah. Thank God. I know he won a championship with him, but Michael Porter was one of the hardest watches for me. Maybe I just missed his games where he actually would go off and hit his threes, but he always just had the clankers. He had a shoulder injury, obviously, in the playoffs last year. And then Aaron Gordon, was hurt too. I think he had back issues or whatever when they lost in the first round.
Yeah.
That team just had to go in a different direction for Jokic. They gave him some more promise with Cameron Johnson. Cameron Johnson, obviously, statistically wise, isn't as good as Michael Porter, but I feel like he's a smarter player. He's good to be around Jokic. This guy, I think with open space and open room, he'll do a lot more with the ball than Michael Porter did. He'll be more of a lights out shooter from 3. Defensively, I feel like he's better. I just think that is overall, it's half the price too. It's exactly what I feel like the Nuggets needed to do to kind of bolster, give it some new energy, some fun energy. Even with the Tim Hardaway Jr. today, the addition, or was it yesterday? Tim Hardaway Jr., that was a great addition too. Yep. But this team, Bruce Brown comes back. So right now they're really set to make another title run because they have a perfect team around Jokic. But also, dude, I think that Cameron Johnson, like Mikal Bridges, given the opportunity, like when before they traded him, he looked like, a second guy, a guy that can be next to a superstar, a star. I'm not saying Cameron Johnson's that guy, because Aaron Gordon obviously is going to be that guy next year, and Jamal Murray, so he'd be fourth in line. But this guy is going to look like a number 2 or number 3 at times, I feel like, 100%. In that offense. So I love it so much for the Nuggets. And it sucks because it's the Nuggets, and they'll probably win another championship for the Suns again.
I'd rather have them win a championship than the Rockets. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
And I'll be rooting for Cam along the way. It's the same kind of situation where, different but the same when you look at Denver, Milwaukee, and Phoenix, right? Now, obviously, Milwaukee and Phoenix have MVPs that they're trying to hold on to, and we're like, Devin Booker, But Jokic, you needed to put guys around him. You need to reinvigorate that team. They were getting kind of crusty, and MPJ is crusty, and he's $17 million a year more than Cameron Johnson. So you bring in a guy who's going to do pretty much the same thing. Catch and shoot, stand in the corner, can drive to the basket a little bit, play probably better defense than MPJ because he was a pigeon out there. And it makes me happy for Cam that he's in a good place. It sucks it's in Denver. It sucks it's in the Western Conference. But I will be rooting for him because, Cam Johnson, he's one of those guys. He's one of our boys. Gosh, I don't know if I want to go there yet. Houston Rockets acquire Dorian Finney-Smith and Clint Capela. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, I feel like this is a team that's just kind of aligning themselves for their next big move. They've got a ton of players, man. They got Kevin Durant, Tari Eason, Cam Whitmore, Dorian Finney-Smith, Jabari Smith Jr. They just signed to a massive deal. They got like 5 guys who all can play the power forward. And I heard somebody say on the Zach Lowe podcast that the biggest challenge that he foresees with Houston, this is my thing with Houston, is I don't know how good they're going to be. Obviously, the way I feel about Houston is like the way I felt about the Suns the past 2 seasons. It's like, dude, that roster makes sense. That roster makes sense. That's going to be a very good team. And they've got 2 things in common with the Suns. Is one, they have a challenge where they have Kevin Durant on their team. And you don't know what Kevin Durant on your team is like until you have Kevin Durant on your team. And the other biggest issue with that team is you don't have a lot of playmakers. You have Fred VanVleet, who took less money to get to this team to that point. But that's the only playmaker you trust. And if he gets injured in any capacity, that team becomes very interesting very quick because they have a bunch of quality wings and some great defenders. And they got Clint Capela for $7 million to back up Steven Adams. And, again, Finney-Smith and Eason and Whitmore. And, it's a lot of really good wing players. But what's the point of having good wing players if you can't get them the ball? I could see a black hole going to Kevin Durant and then him not happy. I mean, there's a lot of people are going to be riding Houston's dick next year, and I'm not going to be one of them.
I'm not. It's not just because I'm a hater and Kevin Durant's second behind Deandre Ayton as my most hated player and professional, like just sports hate. And he is. So I'm going to hate that. I'm going to hope they suck.
Is.
But the more and more I look at this, the more I'm just like, this reminds me of, I don't remember if you remember. I mean, I don't know if you remember that the one team, Philadelphia Eagles, with Michael Vick. Do you remember when they had that squad? I think it was Michael Vick.
Deshaun Jackson.
They had LaShawn
McCoy.
Cornerback. Yeah, they had everybody. They came into this season. I don't think they made the playoffs.
They were stacked, man.
They were stacked. But I was like, I don't think that's
Jeremy
Maclin. Just too many guys. They're kind of doing that. They have a lot of names, but I want to see it on the court. And big prediction right now. I'm gonna throw it right now before the jammies next year. I just think the Suns are going to be within 2 games of the way of in the state.
I like it.
Rockets next year. I don't believe in it, and it's nothing to do with my hate with Kevin Durant because I think it's a good team. But I just don't believe in it yet. I want to see it for a few weeks, obviously, maybe a couple months. But
I'm the same way.
I'm not having a good vibes from the whole thing.
Me too, and I'm with you. And I do think there's a bias. There's a Kevin Durant bias for me there, but I do think that their lack of playmaking and their reliance on Fred VanVleet might ultimately hurt them. All right, last guy to talk about before we get out of here. Obviously, this is the big news on the day. Coming out of Portland, was in Portland for two total years. You know what time it is.
Watch.
Deandre Ayton signs with the Los Angeles Lakers. He was bought out of Portland for $25 million of his $34 million contract, I believe it was. Became a free agent, cleared waivers today at 2 p.m. Shortly thereafter, it was announced that he was going to the Los Angeles Lakers. Matthew, thoughts?
It's kind of been up and down for me all day with this one. Originally, I'm like, oh, good luck with the dude, right? Good luck with him. Whatever happened with all the leaked stuff from Portland, is it true or not? I don't know. Obviously, we know that behind the scenes, he was always a nice guy. He was a guy that you can talk to, that you can hang out. He was supposedly one of the funniest guys on the team. But when it came to being serious and playing basketball, that was the frustration. Whatever was leaked from Portland saying that he was late to the buses, to the planes. He was late to even practices. I can see that as a frustration. That's something that you just want to get rid of him, right? Buying him out, just see you later. It made sense for Portland to do that. But then there's the other side of it. It's like, DA, does he just want to play for a winner? I don't know if I can't see that as anything true. I can't see that as actually a headline of like DA wanting out of Portland because he wants to play for a winner. And Los Angeles Lakers or the Pacers, I don't see that as it being true. But if he's going to play with anybody, Luka Doncic is going to make him look great. But the fact that he's a Laker and he might suck and that fan base might chew him out, and I love it because the sports hate on DeAndre Ayton is real with me. I can't stand the dude, and I never will. God bless him as a person, but what he brings to a team and just kind of dismantling from the inside out at times, I don't want that on my team. So I'm glad he's a Laker right now. How are you feeling?
When it comes to DA, we saw flashes with him, And the 2021 playoff run was a glimpse of the best version of DA, right? He was aggressive. He was decisive. He was dominant. But ultimately in Phoenix, those moments faded. And too often, so did he. He missed rotations. He fumbled rebounds. And as well as I do, doing this podcast night after night for 5 years, there were games where he looked disengaged and even disinterested. Not every night, but enough to create a pattern, enough for a team that had championship aspirations to say, we need more. So they shipped him to Portland in the Damian Lillard 3-team deal, and it was a deal that felt less like a blockbuster, more like a clearance sale. Ayton was the former number 1 overall pick, and we moved him for like Nurkic and spare parts. And then Portland just waived him. And Jason Quick of The Athletic, and we do have some breaking news as it comes to the Suns trade and 7 potential teams with the KD trade. I'm going to read that here momentarily, but that's also being reported by The Athletic. But he said, and again, to your point, we don't know how much of this is true, but typically, these are those the season's over Athletic hit pieces on guys. In the end, they couldn't live with his bad ways. The tardiness to team flights and practices, according to the team source, the skipping of rehabilitation appointments, fans saw him slam chairs when he was taken out of games, and a team source said there were tantrums in the locker room when he was sidelined for poor effort. So they $25 million to go away. So now he's wearing purple and gold. He's back in our division, in the Pacific Division. He's back in our lives. And you can bet your ass he's going to show up when he faces the Suns, and he'll dunk with a vengeance, and he'll scream with swagger, and those DA stands who never left, those who still blame Monty or Book or CP3 or the guard situation in Portland, they'll be loud again. And that's okay. I hope he plays well. I always, as well as I do, like we both love DA. And the reason that we soured on DA is because he was supposed to be our chosen one. He was like Anakin Skywalker, and that promise slowly eroded. The force was strong with him, but the follow-through was fragile, and the cracks started to show. Not necessarily in his stats, because people start throwing you his stats, his advanced stats. They were fantastic, but it was his motor, and it was in his effort and in his basketball IQ, in his mental toughness or his lack thereof. So I'm interested to see how he looks paired next to LeBron and Luka. I'm interested to see the first time LeBron James throws an entry pass to him and he's not ready for it and it hits him in the forehead. I'm interested to see LeBron light him up on the sideline, because LeBron will do that. He will show you up in every chance, and Ayton might put himself in a situation where he gets lit up. So, again, I wish the guy well. It's going to be funny watching Lakers fans lose their fucking minds. I mean, that's the way it is. But good riddance, it's just, oh, well, that's the way I kind of feel about it. Oh, well, good luck in LA, man.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think it's just difficult because hearing that stuff, because I remember him kicking chairs here, and it looks so fake to me. Like it would come at times where it's like we were expecting DA to like get the ball, kind of dominate when Devin Booker was hurt this last year, or before the trade for Kevin Durant. And I just remember him kicking chairs and doing that. But I remember him on the floor, man. He was god-awful with the ball. They were trying to actually move stuff around him, have him be the facilitator at times. Did not work out. So I just want him to be truthful, be who he is, obviously, but also own up to your shit, dude. Own up that you're not that good.
Stand on your business, as they say on Love Island.
Oh, God, dude. Do you watch? I had the biggest FOMO with that shit. Everyone watches it but me. I won't give in. I'm not going to do it.
I wasn't going to give in. My wife was watching it this whole past weekend, and finally about midday Sunday, I sat down and, yep, I'm in.
Fuck, man.
I
just can't stand the kissing. I can't do the kissing.
You fast forward button, dude. That
and
the
chat's so gross.
Yeah,
the chats. I can't. I'm out.
Yeah, but you fast forward through it.
I'm so mad at everybody for watching that show, but I know I'm going to be sucked in, just like the Kardashians.
Just like what's the show with the pods?
With the pods? Oh yeah. It's Love is Blind. Love is Blind. Yeah.
Love is Blind. Yeah, you got sucked into that shit, and then I got sucked in that shit, and I refuse to do it again. But real quick, I do want to talk about something that The Athletic just released 26 minutes ago. This is from Fred Katz. He says, league sources tell The Athletic that the Rockets and the Suns are working on expanding the Kevin Durant trade into a deal that would involve a league record 7 teams. Other teams involved in negotiations at the moment include the Atlanta Hawks, Brooklyn Nets, Golden State Warriors, Los Angeles Lakers, and Minnesota Timberwolves, league sources say. No trade is imminent, and details are being ironed out as of Wednesday night. In a would-be 7-team trade, there is an unprecedented amount of detail. Unfortunately, while a 7-team trade would make for a thrilling topic at a cocktail party, there have been many unexpected developments in these negotiations, at least in the iterations of the deal discussed so far. Most of the recognizable names are from trades that have already been agreed to and not yet finalized. The Hawks would be sending Clint Capela to the Rockets in what would become a sign-and trade, at least sources say. Durant would go to Houston. The previously reported return for him, including Dillon Brooks and Jalen Green, would go to Phoenix. Only 5 players who were in the NBA last season are being discussed in the current iteration of the trade as of now. Durant, Brooks, Green, Capela, and Daquan Plowden, league sources say. The rest of the players being discussed are from already agreed upon draft night trades that are yet to be finalized and can't be until July 6th. So that's like, come on, Malawatch. So essentially what this is there's been about 3 different trades that have occurred in the NBA. And I think that they're just going to kind of move it all into one single trade to help make the math work and maybe a pick here and a pick there. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting, obviously the Suns being a major part of this primary trade, to see if there's any other additional assets that the Suns incur as a part of this deal.
Yeah, it's just like the second round draft pick that all of a sudden appeared for the Phoenix Suns, right?
Well, we got 5 of them for Kevin Durant, then we traded like all of them to get.
Well, didn't after the Kevin Durant trade, right?
Oh, you're right. Yeah, when
like
the Mark Williams trade, when they announced the Mark Williams trade, on draft night, it was like, well, the Suns are sending their 29th overall pick and their 2029 first round pick, which is the bastardized pick of 3 other picks, to the Charlotte Hornets to get Mark Williams. When the Phoenix Suns announced the trade a couple days ago, they also mentioned that the Suns got back from Charlotte another second round pick that we had never heard about. So
I think this stuff's just kind of thrown out there quickly, like Shams, like him, obviously stumbling a little bit yesterday, but he was just throwing stuff out there quickly. So I think it, obviously, like you said, it's all going to come together and make more sense, like the math works out. So it makes sense. You want to get it out there and beat everybody to it, but then obviously there's going to be more connections than you realize.
A lot of little details. All right, anything else this offseason that you want to talk about, or do you just want to go turn that fan around so it's on you?
No, you know what, I think it's been a great free agency. I think a lot of teams got really They got better, but I just feel like
the West got better.
The West, and that's the one thing.
Memphis. What do you think about Triple J?
The re-signing? Oh, he hurt his toe.
He re-signed him, then the next day he has like toe turf surgery.
Yeah. That sounds like something that would happen to the Suns, like something good. Like DA just goes off for 25 and 20, and then he's suspended for 25 games.
What do you think about the Pacers? The Pacers go to Game 7 of the NBA Finals. Yeah. Tyrese Halliburton tears his Achilles in the NBA Finals. Less than a week later, you trade away your center who you've had for 10 years. That's some Sun shit right there.
Yeah, but
how do you feel? But if you're a Pacers fan, imagine feeling that.
Yeah, fuck. Obviously, watching a lot of the playoffs, I love Miles Turner, I do, but I feel like just in the finals, like at times defensively, he was just owned. He was just launching threes, breaking,
and he couldn't hit any of them.
So I feel like he was more. If they have a lot of fan favorites there now that were not traded, not released, kind of build with them. Miles Turner, go ahead and make your money. We'll kind of refuel this year, wait for Halliburton to come back the final or in 2 years. Mm-hmm. And then after that, or when that happens, we'll have another piece added here or there. It's still going to be a fun team in a couple of years. Next year, it's still going to be fun. I can deal with that team even without Miles Turner. I liked him. I wanted the Suns to get him before we're doing that one pod, or obviously you can't get him because of the apron issues, but I'm fine with it. Move on from him, but I think it took a little bit like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Like, oh wait, hold on. Okay, I'm actually here with that. We'll be okay in a few years.
I thought Ayton was going to end up in Indiana, man. I'm
so glad they didn't get him. If they got Ayton, I'll be like, oh, you guys really fucked up then, because no one's there going to hold him accountable.
Well, on that note, I think we'll go ahead and get out here, Jamsters. Again, my name's John Voigt, a managing editor of Bright Side of the Sun. He's Matthew Lissy, senior staff writer, Bright Side of the Sun. We're the Sun's Jam Session Podcast, John and Matthew. Thank you for hanging out with us. Give us a thumbs up if you happen to be watching on the YouTube feed. If you haven't subscribed on the YouTube feed, please do so. Like, we've been stuck at like 3,800 subscribers for fucking a year now, man.
It goes up like 5, we lose 6, it goes up 4. Like, it will not get past this point.
I know. I just want to hit 4,000. Like Suns Geek's got 10 G's, man. Like I want.
He has like 6 more years on us, right?
I know, but still, like, and his content's much more entertaining. Like, You know,
Yeah,
he doesn't use the F word like we do.
Just stay subscribed. Don't unsubscribe to us.
Yeah, don't unsubscribe, guys. But until next time, we'll come to you next week and kind of see what's going on. So Matthew, tell them what to do.
Go home and love your family. Really.
And R.I.P. Dad.
Happy
3 years today.
Oh,
Miss
yeah.
you, Pop.
Hey, you're listening to the Suns Jam Session podcast, shooting the shit about the Suns since 2019.